The new reformatted Top Gear had been on the screens. I think it kicked off in 2002. And I just thought it looked like a really fun programme. And they had some really cool driving going on. They had a character called the Stig who was dressed in black. It all looked really exciting and interesting. I just wrote in saying, do you need any more drivers? I don't know, could I go and film this? And I had some ideas and I put those into my opening letter, which was enough to get me noticed, at least to get like an interview or an audition, because I hadn't realised, but they were actually looking for other people to get involved. So I was very fortunate. I got invited to go down to the Dunsfold Aerodrome, Top Gear's test track. I met a very dishevelled looking man with a bursting file of papers and he was desperately in need of a belt to hold his trousers up. Turned out he was a complete boss, executive producer, Andy Willman. So we met down there on a very grey day and he gave me the keys to a Ford Focus and said, right, do your best. So he showed me around the track first, which is kind of this figure of eight deal, which I became very used to, and showing people around it for countless sessions in years to come. And basically we had to set a lap time, which he took very seriously. He was sort of there, like his hand was on a plunger with the stopwatch. And off I went. I roared off in the Ford, and in about 3 or 4 laps, I thought I can't go any quicker than that. So I said, that's me. He didn't look very impressed. So I thought, okay, so not much will come of this. But apparently, I later discovered he went back to the office and I'd done the fastest time that car had done. And they were impressed enough to hire me off the back of that. I went to quite extreme lengths to keep my identity a secret. I used to park my car in a field a million miles away, or as far away as I could get from the chutes, so as not to be tracked or get my car reg taken. And I would arrive wearing a balaclava, which equally was a bit disturbing for the crew, who hadn't been used to this kind of serious approach. And I was very antisocial. And in the beginning, I didn't really want to speak to anybody. I just sort of wanted to keep to myself and do the best job I could. And then I would disappear back into the changing room where the Harrier pilots, because Dunsfold was a test track back in the day, and the door would never be allowed to be opened when I was getting changed. I'd come back out with the balaclava and off I'd go. And that worked really well, up until the point that we moved to a different cabin. The Sunday Times broke in and went through all my stuff to try and find out, my identity, hoping to find a wallet with a credit card and a name. Fortunately, I'd dealt with that problem, and they reported that the Stig has size 10 feet. That was about as much as they could get out of me. But it started to whittle away, because occasionally BBC, I would have to tell car manufacturers who it was for insurance purposes, and that little creep started to get in, and eventually it was starting to get leaked out on Wikipedia, which didn't exist when I started. A video came out on YouTube where you could identify my voice from the video, which was an interview I'd been asked to do when I was on the programme. And after about 7 years, it was becoming a bit of a whisper that became a noise, and eventually found itself as a proper story in the Radio Times, which was a bit of an own goal. And BBC's own publication revealed my identity in the Radio Times and the TV Guide. So after that, it was very hard to maintain, and basically it was my 8th year. I decided it was time to go, give somebody else another shot, because my identity was no longer a secret. And I thought, well, I'm either going to get told to leave, or I can go out on my own steam. We had a lot of gifted drivers through my tenure at Top Gear, and really interesting, because I take everybody as an individual, and especially when you're teaching someone, they might be over exuberant. You've got to rein them in. Saranov Fiennes comes to mind. I actually had to smack him in the helmet, try and slow him down. To complete surprises like Jennifer Saunders, who I just didn't, had no expectation. She seemed very mumsy and very nice, and she's brilliant on telly. I find her hilarious. And she was an absolute speed demon, a real natural, had a fantastic feel for the car, as did Cameron Diaz, actually, when she came to the show with Tom Cruise. Both of them were really fast, but when they first arrived, it was hammering with rain. We used to get terrible weather at Top Gear. Jamie Oliver had to drive in the snow. But it was hammering with rain, and she was actually faster than Tom Cruise in the rain. And I'd read a bit that I knew she'd done a bit of competition, but still, she was very smooth and completely unfazed by the British weather, set blistering time, and of course, Tom being Tom, the track dried, and he wanted to have a crack at the top slot, and he was just phenomenal. So that was the first time I got to meet Tom Cruise, a guy I've grown up watching on the screens, and his attention to detail was just immense, and his intensity was really strong. He absolutely wanted to learn how to set a fast time. He was very determined. The producers were quite determined for him to spend as little time, I think, in the car as possible because of the sort of giant insurance premiums that were at risk here. But he was so into it, and I, with every guest we had, I would always give it, try and get their best shot, because we used to, obviously go for that one lap, that one special lap. It was all about that, and I felt that he was right on the cusp of doing this special time. So I just gave him a little bit of a couple of tips of how to cut the corner, which, being him, he completely memorised, sliced this apex and basically tipped the car over onto two wheels. The producers were apoplectic with fear and foreboding, but he sort of kept the power on and landed the car, and genuinely that was his fastest lap. I've never seen anything like it before. The car probably was a write-off at the end, and that set the fastest time that we had for that car on the show, which was amazing. So, and that was actually my last episode on the show, so definitely went out with a bang. I love motor racing. There's really no better feeling than crossing the line first and getting that huge sense of achievement you get. The team have worked so hard to get to that point, so you're all in it together. But it is very, in the car you're on your own, and there is an element of that. Quite a lot of your time is spent training on your own. So teamwork is essential, but actually in movie making it's a completely different experience, and I got a taste of that. I did a car commercial back in 2002, and I could see that the way that everybody worked together, that there was something really special about that, and also being able to see and review the footage you've created and how subtle that art was. So that really got me hooked on filmmaking, and so there's a lot of time between races. That's what kind of attracted me to get into filmmaking as well. So I actually have sent my CV out again. It can be effective. And fortunately, I got noticed by Gary Powell, who was making the Bond films back then. We had a meeting, and they were looking to do this insane car chase around Lake Garda for Quantum of Solace, was the Bond film of that time. And they wanted to get pro drivers in to basically take the sort of the violence of the fight scenes to the streets. In this really, really high speed business we were doing. And that was just an incredible moment, because again, who hasn't watched James Bond with your parents? You're there, and, it's just such an incredible franchise. And with the Daniel Craig sort of series, much more visceral action sequences. Quantum of Solace being the first one I'd worked on, and doubling Daniel for that. I think there's no topping it, really. And the car chase that we did, it was close. It was dark at times. We were driving through tunnels at over 100 miles an hour. So that was pretty memorable. But then again, in Skyfall, we had a different challenge, which was my first experience driving what's called a pod car. So that's when the stunt driver sits on the roof, basically, and drives slightly remotely, with the actor or actress inside the car doing their lines, but they have no control over the vehicle. So all the cameras are attached to get those really close shots for a sequence that we've been practicing for weeks. And what it does, it saves the actors all the time of having to, learn to drive in a sequence and drive and concentrate on their, getting their dialogue right. So we do that for them on the roof. The first big campaign that I worked on was actually with Range Rover. We did a film on the Schilthorn mountain at Mürren in Switzerland. And we were there for a week to basically try and beat the fastest time down a downhill 15-kilometre course set by a skier at top speed in a car. So this was no mean feat, and we had to have helicopters to get us up to the top of this point. The car actually was quite easy. It was easier driving it up than down. Gravity was kind of on your side going up the hill, as I found out. Going down was a different matter. So we had these vertical drops all around, basically. Any mistake like that was 100% critical, and it was lovely having a roll cage, but I'm not sure it would have really withstood what could have been coming. So that focused the mind quite a bit. To do one pure run down this hill was really quite special. So we had 2 cracks at it. The shale was really bad, so we're getting punctures every 5k. So on the best run that we did, actually did it with a flat rear left tyre. I'm sad to say that the skier beat my time, basically. So I think I'm going to get the times wrong, but they're around the 12-13 minute mark, which just is mind-blowing. So the race is called the Inferno. I strongly recommend people Google it and check it out. We did it with a car, and the locals thought that it was Mission Impossible, but we did it, so that was really amazing. technology's been a huge thing for me because I've grown up from the petrol through to the diesel, the hybrid, now electric, and vast changes in between in terms of the way that the cars consume energy. That's a global interest now, and for me, working in test and development with the car manufacturers and seeing the pace of change, that's really incredible. And I think that there's a lot of businesses out there that also want to reflect that in their lives, and you can see it in the workplace. There are companies who are able to use the plug-in systems. They're going to produce electricity through their roofs. They can allow employees to charge hybrids in the car park, things like that. So there's a lot of ways we're all making a difference towards climate change, and the automotive side is a huge part of that. So that's been exciting. Recently, I developed a thing called the Driving Masterclass, which is an opportunity to get together with groups of guests and dive into the sort of the forensic detail of producing, top performance in performance sports cars, racing at places like Silverstone, at Palmer Sport and other places, not just in the UK but also around the world. So I've done these informally over the years and really built a picture of what the ideal event looks like. And I think it boils down to really the best instruction in the best cars, the best tracks, and have enough time for each person to really engage with that activity. I think it's great to do an experience, get a sort of a toe in the water with something, that's fine. But for me, I think if you really want to get something out of it, you have to dive into the detail. You need time with an instructor who knows what they're doing to really sort of get the most out of a car, and to really experience it and to understand what these things mean and how much it can open your eyes to a whole new world. Pretty much everybody has done some driving, but driving on a track and learning the art of speed is something that's completely different. So people who've never done it are very blown away by how much it changes the way you see the world.